Hi, my name is Amanda Modern, and I am an author, and I am also a painter. Um, so a little about me, I am the owner of Modern Moksha Designs and Publishing, and I founded it, and I had, like many of us after the start of the pandemic, my job seemed, maybe it wasn't the right fit, or maybe what I thought I wanted to do, it turned out I didn't really want to do in the end, or maybe there were parts of it that really, resonated with me, but there were other parts just they weren't working out the way I thought that they would, or that I hoped that they would. And so in 2021, last year, I lost my job. I wasn't surprised. I did see it coming. And in that time became a time of discovery for me. And I know it probably sounds shocking to say this, but, and maybe not shocking, when we think the worst things that are happening to us end up being the best things that are happening to us, or the things that resulted later, when we look back and think, well, all of these great things happened, and they wouldn't have happened if I hadn't lost my job, for example. And I am grateful for what I learned in my job. I'm grateful for the skills that I learned. I'm grateful for learning other ways of doing them, and I'm grateful for the people that I met along the way. And I'm grateful that, people helped me, when I was, obviously struggling. But at the end of it, it didn't work out. And so then my creative journey began. And it wasn't immediate. I mean, there were times of struggle. There were times that I just wanted to cry every day because I was so uncomfortable with the uncertainty of what was coming next. So I live in the state of Pennsylvania, so, like many people, I was applying for benefits, and because there was such an overwhelm of the system, it was actually 6 or 7 months before I actually saw any money coming from my state. And, and we learn from these things, and maybe we learn that the system that we have in place needs to be updated, or, other techniques need to take place. And so, the pandemic was, and is a terrible thing, but it was a time of growth for me and a time of learning for me. In February, I published my first novel, and that was, February of 2021, I published my first novel. I had been working on it for 13 years. And I had a busy sales career, and I was a workaholic, and I would try a lot of times throughout my career, and my career was about 20 years in academic sales. I tried to kind of get it under control, or practice yoga, or find other ways to relax so that I didn't inevitably fall into this cycle of like working at all hours, or working at midnight, or I'd wake up in the middle of the night, I couldn't sleep, and I'd go upstairs to my office and do some work, while it was quiet. And, at the time, I never thought it was insane, but, I might have a manager say, Amanda, what are you doing? Like, it's 3 a.m. I got an email from you at 3 a.m. What's going on? And I was like, well, I just couldn't sleep, so I just got some work done, and I didn't think anything about it. I just felt like that was normal, and I was getting things done. But, as I look back, I realized that really wasn't healthy behavior, and there were other things that I could have done instead. And maybe my little voice would have said, get up and do some yoga, or, usually what you're supposed to do is do something that either relaxes you, like meditation, or something that's really boring, and mundane or repetitive, like unloading and reloading the not unloading, but unloading the dishwasher or loading the dishwasher. Eventually you get tired and your brain stops moving about whatever, all the excitement or whatever in your mind, the things, your to-do list, whatever it is. And then you're able to go back to sleep. But I just wasn't able to think like that. And I had workaholic tendencies. And, for me, those things stemmed from not feeling good enough. Whether it was something that I perceived when I was a child, or if it was something that I heard my parents say and interpreted it to mean that I wasn't good enough. I can't really say what is the answer, but that was kind of my belief system, that I wasn't good enough. And so working like I did was something that just seemed, like the two went together, just not feeling good enough and just feeling like I had to work all the time, or that I had to work very hard. But that at the end, like, I never really felt good enough, or I never felt successful, or I never felt comfortable being successful. It's just a lot of things, stem from our childhood, whether it's something our parents tell us, or something that we just feel inside, something that we interpret. And so I'm kind of giving you this background because, it took 13 years to write my novel, and part of it's because I had a very busy sales career, and giving myself downtime, it's always been hard for me to play, just to play, or just to take a break, or just to relax. Or I often say I can't really, take a break unless I go on vacation, like I go somewhere away from my home. And what happened with my writing is I would work on the weekend. I, just dedicate a Saturday and do my work the entire Saturday or the weekend. And it was very easy for me. The time went quickly because I loved what I was doing. I worked with an independent editor whom I met through a friend of a creative conference that I went to in Boulder, Colorado. And I met her, and I was really terrified when I met her. It was about 10 years ago, to give her my first 30 pages so she could take a look at it and give me an estimate of, what it might cost to work together, because I had, written about 30,000 words, but I just didn't know what to do next. I didn't, I couldn't edit my own work, or I did, but I just didn't have that knowledge of like what I needed to do to go to the next level. And I was terrified. And I kept like trying to like not show it to her or make excuses. And somehow, she convinced me it would be okay, and it would be okay, and so I was able to trust her. And then from then on, we worked for several years together. It usually took me about 1.5 years to work on a draft. And typically what I would do, and of course I've got a little OCD in me, that comes with the workaholism, is I would go through the draft about 3 or 4 times before I would return it to her. So the first time that I would go through it, and I'd look at her comments and compare it to my draft, and to get an understanding of what she was explaining. And then from there, I would read the draft again. And also, if I couldn't figure out how to fix an issue, I'd like put a little star on it, and so that I'd get back to it, the next reading, because something might come to me later when I read it again. And so then I'd read it again and kind of look to see, was I answering all the questions? And then the next thing I would do is I would highlight the text. And I work in Mac, so there's I think it's the edit menu, and there's a selection called speech, and you click speech. And I had certain voices I like to use, like the voice for South Africa, or the voice for Canada, or just, wherever. It was just to hear a different accent, but also so that it didn't feel similar to my own voice. Because when we read our text, one of the things the brain will do is it'll auto-correct. So you may not hear the correction, but whereas another voice reads it, then you hear the error. So for example, there might be 2 thes, the instead of 1, whereas like the brain will auto-correct and like kind of skip over the second the. So having the text read to me was really helpful. And I would do that a couple of times, and Sometimes the text got to 85,000 words or 65,000 words, so it would take a long time, and I also had to do it so that that when I was working on it, that I tried to do it, a couple days in a row, so I could remember certain details from before, and did I address this or did I not address this? So I would go through this text like this a couple of times before I would hand it back to my editor, and she would look at it, and being a detail-oriented person like this, it actually helped me. That was a plus, and being a little bit on the OCD type A side, whatever you want to call it, benefited me because my book improved. Anyway, by the last three or 4 months of my job, when I could just feel that no matter what I did, I just wasn't able to do what I wanted to be able to do, I started writing again, started working on my blog. It's called The Breathing Room. It's on WordPress, and I've actually kind of moved it. I continue to publish there because I do have readers there who may not, want to move to my website. So, and I just look at it as I'm just expanding my platform, and it is kind of a pain in the butt to have to publish to, 2 different platforms for the blog. One, I have actually 2 in WordPress. But at the same time, if that's where the people are, then I need to go to the people, not necessarily expect them to come to me. So, lots of, spreading it out in lots of pots, I think, I realize is the way to go, and that's what's working for me right now. And then I also have a link that goes to my website, which is modernmokshadesignsandpublishing.com, and I'll put it on the link to this so that you can see that as well, in case you didn't get the spelling for that. But the book is called Finding Moksha, One Woman's Path in Uncertain Times. And one of the things about the title is uncertain times. That was resulted from a conversation I had with a neighbor who lives down the street. And he said, well, when you publish your book, you ought to reference it something related to these times, something about uncertain times. And moksha, I don't really want to give it away because it is an important part of the book. But the word moksha is an important word for me, and what I'm seeking in life. And the book is written as fiction, and it's a book can be 98% true, but 2% fiction, and be published as fiction. And so, and I tell you that because when I talk about my story, it's about a woman who takes back her power from abuse by healing through yoga. People are curious, is this a true story? Is this memoir? Or the title sounds, Finding Moksha, One Woman's Path in Uncertain Times, sounds like it could be a memoir. And, I'll admit, I did start writing as a memoir, but I found the more I wrote and the more that I worked with my editor, the more I couldn't do it. It was too traumatic, to relive things over and over. And so one of the conversations I had with my editor was to fictionalize it. And I really found a lot of freedom in doing that. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more. It might be something that felt true, but if I could also imagine maybe something different, or maybe things that people I knew had told me, and fictionalize that with maybe something that I could relate to from my own experiences, then I felt like I was maybe telling every person's story or one person's story. And I find the kind of books that I've enjoyed reading for a long time is reading kind of, character study sorts of books where things start off, often that you hear people talk about a story that starts from dark to light. So it's like a lot of difficulty. And then how that character changes over time to get to where they are in the end. And it doesn't mean happily ever after, but it means, what did they do in their struggles to feel good, or what was kind of what was the saving grace for them, or how did they identify what was challenging to them, and how did they deal with it, and then how did it get them to where they are, today, for example. Those kind of stories have often inspired me, because I was seeking that for a long time, and I still do. I am still interested in learning about how people start from one point to another. And part of that is I had this career in academic sales for 20 years that I never planned on doing. I have my master's in library and information science, and I worked at a library for 2 years, and then I also worked for it's the consortia. It doesn't exist anymore, but it worked with vendors and with librarians to help provide discount products and services. And I experienced a layoff, and from there I was unemployed, just bought my first house. And for 6 months, I was really scared. I didn't know what was going to come next. And I just started networking. I went to library conferences, and I made 150 contacts, going to sales conferences. Like, one was Special Libraries Association, and then another one was the American College of Research Libraries. There was a conference, I want to say it was in North Carolina, where a vendor that I knew from my previous work gave me a free pass for exhibits. And so I networked. And one of the companies that I networked with was called Readex, which is a division of Newsbank. That's READEX. I spent the majority of my career there. And they did historical archives. And at the time when I started there in 2003, they were just starting to digitize microfilm titles into online resources. And I think other companies were already doing it at the time, but Readex had a huge vault of titles. And so I was there, and I learned how to be a salesperson. And I have to tell you, I was terrified. I assumed that I'd be out of a job within 6 months. I hadn't done sales. I didn't want to be nasty to people, because that's what I thought of with salespeople. I thought, they're lying. They were like, go behind your back. I had a horrible impression of what salespeople were. So I just kind of assumed that I was like, I can't be that person. And yet I learned that was, my belief system about that wasn't true, or at least that wasn't true about the sales rep that I was trained to be. And one of the things that my manager at the time, David Braden, had taught me was let the librarians teach you how to be a good sales rep. And that is what I did. And that really did make a difference. But I'm digressing a little bit, but I want to give you a little bit of background in that, how I wrote my book, and the different challenges that that came upon me, and things that might have seemed to be obstacles, and what you can learn from these obstacles, and that you might look back and think, wow, I really struggled, but I still got through it. And it's sort of the same thing, with my book. I really struggled through the process, and part of the time my book would just sit on the shelf and collect dust, because I just felt like I can't do this, or I'm not good enough, like I'm never going to be good enough, and then there would be this time where I'd be feeling self-loathing. I can never finish anything I say I want to start, and that was like another thing I would say to myself a lot. And at the time when my job, I could just see that it wasn't working, or I didn't have the relationships established that I needed to have established, because I hadn't been at the company long, and I was learning a lot of new things all at once. And, I thought that I could do all of these things, and it was the pandemic at the same time. So what would have been an easier situation turned out to be an awful situation. I turned to writing. I got back to writing, and I started doing blog posts again. It had been 5 years since I had worked on my blog. And I just started writing. I didn't really care, and I did it not during my work time. I would do it, late at night. I'd do it like 10 o'clock at night, and I'd just be writing till midnight. I just would lose track of time, because I loved so much what I was doing. And then the next day I'd struggle through my work and just feel like self-loathing and self-disgust because I couldn't make it work the way I wanted it to. And eventually, I continued writing, and eventually, I saw my draft on the shelf, and I just thought, I'm going to do this. I'm going to publish this. And I started thinking, if I lose my job, I'm going to finish this and I'm going to publish this once and for all. That's it, And I just started thinking, like, it's never going to be perfect. And and it wasn't like a bad thing. It was just like, this is where it is. This is where it's going to be right now. When I finish, it's going to be me feeling this, wanting to say, this is good enough. This is good enough to put out there. And, I felt if my book helped one person, then I knew I was making a difference. And I knew that that's really what mattered to me. So in February, I did self-publish on Amazon. I had thought about going back and forth about, working with a traditional publisher. But, one of my, I don't want to say challenges necessarily, it is, but I had issues with control, and I wanted it to be the book I cared about, not the book that's going to make the publisher lots of money or lots of profit, but I wanted it to be the book that I could feel proud of. And, and maybe a publisher would have, who knows what they would have thought, but I needed to get it out there. And I heard a lot about traditional publishing, and that, you publish, but it's maybe a year before it actually gets out there. And it's a much longer process. And I just was like, it's been 13 years, I don't want to wait another year. And I did want to be in control of my whole process. So I picked the typesetting, I picked the company I work with in terms of formatting the book. I mean, I tried to do it myself, but sometimes the things that you try to do actually make you go crazy, and paying someone else to do it is the better option. And so that's what I ended up doing. I worked with a company called ebook Pbook, and found them to be very helpful. It cost me about $250 to $300 to get a formatted book for ebook and also for paper book. I uploaded that to Amazon, and then when I, clicked publish, like, it was done, but the funny thing is, I thought there would be fireworks, I thought I would feel like, I don't know, I just thought I'd feel, boom, something, and it was just the click of a button. And then later I realized, like, when people say about enjoying the process, it's so true. It's so true. And it's like, but you always think the end result is like when you feel the best. And I did find this too, when I did sales, I get some big sale and I feel so great, but then it was like, I had to get the next sale and the next sale and the next sale. And after a while it was like, oh, I got a sale. But then it was like, okay, now I got to get another sale, and it just, I realized it wasn't really about the thrill of the end result, but it was more the thrill of the process. For example, like, again, when I worked at Redex, the relationships that I built and the friendships that I built with people that I worked with for 10, 12 years, and learning about them or learning about their kids or challenges that they were having, whether it was in their library or I really just learned that, I love the relationships, and still, to this day, like, I miss my customers, and I imagine they miss me too. But, just because of the friendship that we had over the time, and just knowing that, they trusted me and that I would guide them to, what made sense for them and what would be bring the most value to their library, to their researchers, and there was that trust that was built. And so what I can take from being in sales for 20 years is that I learned how much I love relationship management, how much I love, my clients. And it's not, for me, it's not the money really, but of course we all have to pay our bills. But what matters is that I felt that I was helping people, and I felt that, I was making a difference. The professors, they were making discoveries that they never would have had if this microfilm hadn't been digitized. And those, for me, those were the gems. And, I feel the same about my book. You know, I don't really know how successful it is. Maybe it's not that successful in terms of like profits and, you know, the way a publisher, you know, a national publisher might think. But for me, the success is, have I helped somebody? And I have had talks like this on internations. And with internations, one time someone said, she held up a book. I want to say she was a Portuguese writer. And she held up her book and she said, I attended one of your talks a while ago. I don't remember which one it was. But I was inspired by you, and I finished and I edited and I wrote this book, and she talked to me about the book. And unfortunately, I don't have her name. I don't have the name of the title of her book. But I was so touched. So touched because I never really thought of myself as someone who inspired other people. I felt that I was often looking up at other people, like, you know, for me, like Brene Brown, you know, I think she's amazing, you know, or like Elizabeth Gilbert. For a long time, you know, I really liked what she wrote. And it's not that I dislike what she writes now. It's just, you know, for a while I've read a lot of her books, and then, you know, I stopped. And it's not for any particular reason, just my interest changed. And, you know, Brene Brown, you know, she's, to me, you know, she has such amazing things to share. Or like Oprah Winfrey, I admire her a great deal as well. And, you know, like many other people, you know, and, you know, it's the message that I admire. But I just never thought of myself as people looking up at me, you know, and saying like, wow, you inspired me. And it really, it made me feel really good. You know, it just like, you know, I didn't cry when she said it, but I felt so touched. And I was like, you know, if we were in person, because at that time we were on Zoom, if we were in person, I would give you a hug right now, you know, and it felt really special. So, so with that, I'm going to leave you for now. I didn't mean for it to go for this long, but, you know, things, you know, you just got to go with the flow. And to me, you know, I hope that I touch somebody, and I'll be back with more videos. So now these are watercolors that I did when I was in Italy last year, but I'm working on an oil painting, and I call it my art therapy, but I also love to do it. So I'm going to get to that, and later this afternoon I have an online painting group with a bunch of ladies I met from another online class I did in November, December, and I'm super excited, and I'm really glad to connect with you all, and look forward to future chats, or I guess in this case, monologue. But anyway, if any of this stirs you, or you want to share something, you know, feel free to add it into the comments section. Comment, not comics, comment. All right, great, thanks.